I think it has actually helped unite the caucus even more, to realize that we have a very important role to play and an important job ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Parliamentary Oversights Committee are a very important tool for any opposition to hold the government of the day to account. And it's becoming more and more important to hold this government to account, especially because now they have a sitting majority, despite not being elected to do so. Joining us today to talk about the implications of that, as well as some of the tools that the Conservatives still can use to hold the government to account, is a man who has been in government for the last 10 years, or been in Parliament for the last 10 years, has sat on the Standing Committee for Procedure and House Affairs, and pulled into many other committees in very intense investigations. The man himself, Michael Cooper. Mr. Cooper, thanks for joining us on Northern Perspective today.
Great to be with you, Ryan.
Okay, so you are a seasoned veteran when it comes to committee. Did you expect the Liberals to try to grab the committee numbers advantage after acclaiming their majority after the floor crossers, or was this a surprise?
It wasn't a surprise at all. It's been their plan all along, but it doesn't diminish the unprecedented and undemocratic nature of what has taken place. Now, there are some who will say, well, look, the Liberals have a majority in the House, and therefore they should command a majority on committees. And in normal circumstances, that would be true. That would be the case. That is what should happen. But these are not normal circumstances. Canadians did not elect a Liberal majority government. Mark Carney got a minority government. And instead of respecting the democratic result and working with opposition parties, which is what Canadians elected Mark Carney to do, he instead, as part of a strategy, picked off various MPs through undemocratic floor crossing to secure a majority that he didn't earn at the ballot box. And as soon as he got that majority, the very first thing he did was to abuse that majority to stack committees with Liberal members to shut down accountability and oversight. And we said, at the very least, leave oversight committees alone. You know, if you want to have the Health Committee, for example, stacked with a Liberal majority, that's not good. That's not particularly democratic. But at the very least, let committees like Ethics and Public Accounts maintain the balance that existed when this Parliament came together after the election. And but of course, the Liberals did not respect that. And so what we have are all committees, including oversight committees, stacked.
You know, it's funny because whether it's in Parliament or in society in general, you never know how good your rules are until there's somebody that, you know, tries to exploit them.
The Liberals are going to waste no time to use their majority to make it a whole lot more difficult for the opposition to do its job to hold the government to account. And if you look at parliamentary committees over the past number of years when we've had a Liberal minority government, whether it be foreign interference, a RIVE scam, the Green Slush Fund, the list goes on and on. Mark Carney's conflicts of interest. We've been able to expose some of the conflicts and corruption and mismanagement of these Liberals through these committees. And that is going to be much more difficult now that the Liberals have a majority to use at least committees for that purpose.
Well, and hopefully when Conservatives form government one day, there can be a study into this last 10 years and maybe there's some changes that can be brought forth. But, you know, you talk about those scandals, and those are really, really significant scandals. Those are the ones that essentially brought down the Trudeau government, you know, a RIVE scan, SDTC, and the SCTC scandal is still with the RCMP. We're still waiting on the result of that investigation. But now we're in a position where if any of these scandal or any new scandals end up coming up, it's questionable whether the Conservatives will be able to prosecute these as effectively as they did in a minority government, because the Liberals could just vote to either move the meeting in camera or shut it down completely, correct?
Well, that's right. And it brings me back to the majority Liberal Parliament when I first got elected. And I sat on the Justice Committee during the SNC Lavalin scandal. And Jody Wilson-Raybould gave, of course, very powerful testimony about how Justin Trudeau put pressure on her to effectively shut down an investigation, to shut down charges with respect to SNC Lavalin, the prosecution of SNC Lavalin. And she, the minister, then minister, former minister Raybould, said that she wanted to come back to committee, but she had more to offer. And we put forward a motion at the Justice Committee for her to come back to tell her story. And after 30 minutes of debate, Liberals used their majority to defeat that motion. And then instead of facing the cameras, instead of answering questions from the media, Liberal MPs on the committee walked out the back door. That's what a Liberal majority government looks like when it comes to accountability. No accountability.
And isn't that interesting? Because that's 10 years apart almost. You have the Justin Trudeau Liberals 10 years ago, and now the Mark Carney Liberals, and they're functioning in exactly the same way. And you even see some of the Liberals, when they're putting forth these motions, they even seem uncomfortable doing so. But they're doing so nonetheless. So they know it's wrong. They know that this is not the will of the Canadian people, but they're doing so anyway. What is it like sitting across from these folks when they're executing these motions that are just not in the spirit of parliamentary democracy?
Well, with respect to this unprecedented motion that the Liberals brought forward to stack committees, abusing their illegitimate majority, or effectively illegitimate majority, not only did they bring the motion forward, but they didn't allow any meaningful debate. I mean, they brought in time allocation after about an hour and a half of debate, and Parliament debated it for 1 day before they rammed it through. And within minutes of ramming it through, the committees were changed, and they had their members in place.
And just for everybody's information, can you just briefly explain what time allocation is? Because I think a lot of Canadians are interested in some of this parliamentary procedure, but they may not understand the nuances.
Well, just very simply, it's a way for the government to limit debate. So what that meant upon bringing forward that motion is that it provided a handful of hours of debate and before it went to a vote.
So basically it says you can only discuss this for X amount of time, and then we must go to a vote. And that's a problem, because that doesn't let Parliament fully explore the issue. It limits amendments. And I know the Conservatives did put forth an amendment to try to protect the oversight committees, which obviously that was not accepted. And this is now a very concerning time for Canadians. But to your point, this is not the first time the Conservatives have had to face a majority Liberal government. So what tools do you have to ensure that Canadians can still be confident that there are ways, albeit different ways, for the Conservatives and the opposition parties to hold the Liberals to account?
Well, we still have tools. We still have the House of Commons. We will continue to use the House of Commons to the best that we can. We still have committees. I mean, there still are committees. I mean, it's not as if they may try to shut things down, but when they do shut things down, we can call the Liberals out for that. We're going to have to, I think, have press conferences, talk to the media, do all of these things, use our social media platforms to expose issues of conflict, mismanagement, and corruption. But those are all tools we have regardless, we're just going to have to use those even more because committees just aren't going to be the same with the Liberals being able to effectively veto uh, any any motions that they view as politically embarrassing or inconvenient.
Do you think it's going to be easier now, just from a technology perspective, than it was in 2015? And also, there seems to be a broader public interest in Canadian politics now than there was, and maybe that's also reflective of technology. So, do you think it'll be a little bit easier to get the word out?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt, to your point, that a lot more Canadians seem to be following day to day House of Commons, including committees, in a way that just wasn't the case when I was elected 10 years ago. Outside of question period, most Canadians didn't really follow much else that took place in the House of Commons. Now that's quite a bit different. Everywhere I go, people are saying, well, I'm following this committee or that, or watching Northern Perspective, or watching other YouTube channels, or social media just generally is a lot bigger than it was even 5 years ago. So yes, it's changed in that way. So we have, in that sense, some platforms and some tools that we can use more effectively than the last time the Liberals had a majority.
Now, you mentioned the House being one of the tools, and this is one thing that Canadians should be comforted in, because although they can shut off the cameras and hold committee meetings in relative secrecy, they can't do that in the House of Commons, can they?
They can't do that.
So that is going to be, I think, even more important for Canadians to stay engaged in debate, not just question period, and understanding that Parleview will broadcast the House of Commons continuously throughout the day from the time the sitting opens until the time it sits. Sometimes that goes to midnight. It all depends. As it stands going forward, Mr. Cooper, you're still on the Procedure and House Affairs Committee. No doubt you'll be called into other committees as needed. It's still business as usual for the Conservatives in holding these Liberals to account, isn't it?
Yes, and I also sit on the Ethics Committee.
In terms of Canadians themselves, what can Canadians do to help hold these Liberals to account? What can Canadians do to help let them know that what they're doing now isn't acceptable, and any future conduct in committee where they do want to shut down discussion, they do want to shut down the camera and public visibility? What can Canadians do to help hold the Liberals to account?
Well, I think Canadians just need to stay engaged and to continue to follow things. And we will do our job to hold the government to account in the best way that we can, using all of the tools that we have available to us. And I think within the Conservative caucus, even though it's difficult to see a government now with a majority that they didn't earn, abusing their power to stack committees, I think it has actually helped unite the caucus even more, to realize that we have a very important role to play and an important job ahead, and that we're frankly going to have to work even harder than ever to do that job effectively on behalf of Canadians.
That's actually a really good point. So you think that the result of what Carney has done has actually galvanized the caucus together?
Absolutely. And I think even some of our former colleagues that have left us, that actually has had the effect of uniting members, not dividing us in a way that perhaps Mark Carney was hoping would happen.
Well, I think that's a message that Canadians should take as well. And this is the message that we've been putting out there, is that when things get tough, Conservatives don't back down, Conservatives dig in. And that should just motivate us even more and allow us to, find the strength to work even harder to hold this government to account. So eventually we can get Canada back to the state and at which we're all proud of growing up in this country, and we could not worry about walking down the street at any point during the day, never mind at night. We could look forward to building a career, look forward to building a life and a family and a home. So on behalf of all Canadians, thank you, Mr. Cooper, and all of your caucus colleagues for continuing this fight and for demonstrating that this country is always worth fighting for.